Hello. Uh, this past week, I went up into Northern California and camped for a couple of days in Trinity National Forest. Well, I think it was Six Rivers. It was in Trinity County. And I like going up in a national forest because there's usually not too many people around. And getting back in nature, if you get away from the people, the wildlife's not disturbed. And it's just a good chance to relax and get away from it all. So I went up there camping by myself, and and got up in the coast ranges in an old cut over redwood forest that had came back, and found an old campsite. There wasn't any sign of any people from the last year. The grass had grown up in the campfire area. The logging road, nobody had walked in it. There was blowdowns across the road and trees. Just wasn't any tracks or people leaving any. Uh, just wasn't any people sign except old people sign from years back. And I pulled in and had my pickup kind of hid and just camped for a couple of days. There've been a lot of wildfires out west and in Northern California that's kind of decimated a lot of the forest up here, and this was a part of the forest that hadn't seen a wildfire in a long time. A lot of old rotten redwood stumps and logs, and it was steep. And I just stayed for a couple of days. I pulled my air mattress out and camped out under the stars. And didn't have cell reception unless I went on top. I found a road that went up and got on the very top of a mountain that I was staying on, and I could get cell reception. And the second day I was there, it was late in the afternoon, I walked out, and I decided to keep going on this road I hadn't been on. I was half a mile or more from my camp, and I was just kind of walking along and being quiet. I usually like to be quiet and not leave any sign. And I wasn't really just looking for wildlife. I hadn't noticed very much wildlife. There wasn't many birds up there. Squirrels, or just, I knew there were a few deer, but not too many, just a little bit of sign. The road was kind of like a shelf. And an old logging road that hadn't had a vehicle on it in a long time because the Forest Service had blocked them off. And it just went kind of flat, and I think the reason they did it was where they could get those big redwood logs out years ago. And I kept walking down further down this road I hadn't been before, and I was just kind of looking up to my right, which goes up the mountain. And down to my left, it was a pretty steep slope going down for, I don't know, 30 or 40 feet, and it leveled off a little bit, which was a little unusual for there because most of it was really pretty steep. And the forest was kind of open. And I heard this racket and this whooping sound down below me. And I kind of got my bearings and I looked down, and it was a bear, and it was running off from me. And I immediately just kind of startled there for a minute, and then I sat down behind just a little bit of brush, and I was looking out. It was on down below me, I don't know, 40 or 50 yards, and it was a big old pretty black bear, and I didn't even know there was any bear in the country. And it slowed down, and it was broadside to me, and it was just black as a crow's wing, kind of blue black. It just fat and shiny and pretty, with a kind of a wheat straw colored muzzle. And so I just got really still and watched it. It was kind of chuffing, and I could tell it was kind of agitated. It scared me, and I scared it. And I'd heard some sounds that day and maybe the day before, and I couldn't quite identify them. And I think it was the bears making some vocal sounds. And I'm not going to try to imitate what the bear sounded like, and it was kind of stirred up. And I sat still, and I had a white cowboy hat on, and which probably stood out. But I understand bears don't have the best eyesight in the world, but the wind was blowing in my face, so it couldn't smell me. And I know they have a really good sense of smell. And I hadn't really had much experience in my life with bears. I was just thrilled to see this bear. It was about 50 yards out, I guess. And the forest was kind of open compared to what I'd seen, so I was able to see it, and the sun was behind me, had gone over the mountain. And I just kind of settled down and watched it. And it was chuffing and looking and trying to figure out what was going on. And it kind of got out of sight, and I couldn't see it. And I moved and looked, and I think it must have spotted me because it took off running. It was amazing how fast that bear could run. I'd heard they could run faster than a horse for short distances, and I'd believe it after seeing this bear run. And it kind of got out in the edge of my eyesight down there because of the thick stuff, and I couldn't hardly make it out. And I was kind of getting in the hunting mode. I've been a hunter all my life, and I could hear some more sounds, but I couldn't pinpoint them. And so I decided to try a noise I'd use from predator calling and getting squirrels stirred up. And so I gave it a little, kind of like a rabbit squeal. I gave it one of these, and the bear kind of perked his ears up, and it started coming toward me, and it stopped, and I thought, I waited a little bit, and then I gave it I said, well, I'll give it a bear's, it's the alpha predator, especially a black bear nowadays. The grizzly bears have been extinct in California for most of the 20th century. And so I gave it like a doe bleat or a fawn bleat call. I went, wah, wah. And it came up about to where it stopped before. It took off from it run. It kind of stayed there, and it got to looking at me, and it had pinpointed me, and it just got kind of agitated. And I was thinking maybe it was a big male, but I was hearing other noises that were higher pitched, and it must have been some cubs. There were some redwood trees between me and it, and I think the cubs, just reconstructing it, ran up the tree. And this was a mama bear, and she was stirred up wanting to protect those cubs. And so I watched her, and she just, from the body language and moving around, she was pretty stirred up. And she got behind a tree, and I heard this clawing noise, and I really couldn't see. I thought the bear had stood up and was clawing high on the tree, but I couldn't see to identify it. It might have been clawing on a log in the ground, but since I couldn't see, and there was a blow-down tree right to my right, and nobody had been down that road, and I kind of slipped through as easy as I could through the tree. I made a little racket. There wasn't any way around it, and I got to the other side, and I got to looking, and I could see it, and it was clawing, and so when I got to the other side, it spotted me, and it was looking right at me. And I had my iPhone, and I could take pictures, and I knew it was way out, and if I blew them up, I knew they were going to be kind of grainy, but that's the best I could do. It was like I was a hunter. Instead of having a gun or a bow, I had an iPhone. And an iPhone's kind of like bow hunting. You got to get pretty close to get a shot with an iPhone that'll show up with wildlife. And so this bear kept watching me, and it'd move back and to and shuffle along and make noises and look at me, and it was clearly hindsight, I believe the cubs were between me and him. Sometimes they sounded like they were a little behind me, but those redwood trees are tall and the foliage is so thick you couldn't see up there. There wasn't any way I could tell if the cubs were up there. It's just too thick. And so this went on, I don't know, for 5 or 10 minutes. I was watching the bear. The bear would move around and move back. And after a little while, I decided to go back through that treetop that crossed the road. And I went through, that was back toward the camp. And the bear was watching me this whole time, and it was like we were communicating with each other. And it was telling me, in no uncertain terms, don't come any closer. I'd have liked to got a closer shot, but the road, it was steep going down the road, and as fast as that bear could run, I wasn't going to have it make a charge, and then I had to go straight up a real steep hill. So we both kind of had our standoff line. It didn't come any closer than about 50 yards, and I stayed on the road. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, it was clear the bear wasn't going to leave. And I just gave it I just decided, well, you know, sorry to bother you, but I'm going to leave and let you get back about your day. And so I just walked on out. Mosquitoes were pretty thick. I remember sitting there just trying to have to be still with mosquitoes all over me. Those redwood forests are just full of mosquitoes when it gets kind of still. And anyway, I had some deep mosquito repellent or insect repellent on me. And I was coming back down the road, and I was thinking, well, I hadn't been thinking, I've been sleeping on an air mattress in a wide open. And it was almost dark, and I decided, well, I'd sleep again on my air mattress I was already set up. And I had this mosquito repellent, and I was thinking, this is a wild bear. It's living up here where there's not many people. That's one reason it was surprised to see me, because there hadn't been any people there. They hadn't for a long time. And so getting back toward my camp on the road, I was thinking it'll probably come on this road if it comes. So I got that mosquito repellent out. I sprayed it a couple of times around the road. When I got back, I put all my food up in my pickup, and I sprayed it around my camp. And I had some sweaty, smelly clothes that I'd wore the last day or two, and I hung them up on the bushes around there and sprayed the mosquito repellent around. And I think, well, they get a nose full of that. I really didn't think the bear would come after me. It was interested in protecting its young and interested in avoiding people. So I just went ahead and slept out in the open that night, and got up the next morning, and I went back to look where it was. And I couldn't exactly pinpoint the place where the bear was, but I think I was wondering what he was eating, but I could see where it had I think they were eating insects in those old rotten redwood stumps and logs and things. I could see where it tore some of those apart. Found some bear scat or poop in the road, and looked around. That was the second night I'd camped there, and I needed to come back anyway. I'm getting ready to go to India and getting my visa together and all that kind of thing. But it was just a special treat for me to get to see a bear in the wild, which I hadn't really had much experience coming from Mississippi, where we got a few bears, but you know, not really. We really don't have bears like they do out here out west. But I hope y'all enjoyed this video, and that was my bear experience. I'm not saying I did the right thing, but that's what it felt like at the time for me to do. And I'll catch y'all on the flip-flop. Bye.